Hello and welcome to this CodeBuddies.org live code hangout. Today we're going to be working on the Western Friend website. We're migrating from Drupal to Wagtail CMS. All of the source code is available on GitHub. And I believe pull request in progress here. We're doing some last minute changes to our content importers and just getting the project ready. Small cleanup stuff for bugs discovered along the way. We're going to start beta testing soon with the editor of Western Friend and potentially other users. So let's go ahead and hop over here to VS Code and trying to get my bearings a little bit. Essentially what we're doing the main task is to make sure we can import all of the data from the Drupal CMS, including creating an initial structure of Wagtail pages for content, just more or less static content like the donation page and events listing or contact form, but as well as the more dynamic content. I've got some imports, some data downloaded, some import data downloaded. Let's go ahead and run the project just to see where we're at, get our bearings here. So here's our blank home page, doesn't have any content. We've scaffolded our page structure. Now I can log in and access, now that I'm logged in, at least I can access the Wagtail admin area. Ooh, and there's a new release out, so that might be something we could update in the process of working today. I believe I've already done some dependency updates in this pull request. The poetry file. I'm not sure if Wagtail's in there, but yeah, let's go ahead and grab that update as well. Using the poetry package manager, it kind of extends on pip as well as conventions in the Python packaging ecosystem like pyproject.toml. So it adds some usability improvements that pip doesn't have or hasn't had until recently, such as this constraint solver. There we go, we got Wagtail updated and a few other changes, Django, patch level. So while our project's basically in alpha, I'm just kind of running these updates without a lot of extensive testing. Actually, we're already in poetry. Okay, now that will go away. We could read through the release notes if interested. I'm not sure if there were any major changes that are pertinent to this project. So I can move this media library item up here. Try to make this a little bit more accessible. Subscriptions, donations, probably. here. I forget what the attribute is. So if I look for the magazine, and I look at the menu order attribute, let's see, put it around the same. Whoops, now I'll refresh that. All right, make it a little heavier. Magazines are primary content. Media library might be up there. Yeah, just generally, we'll reorganize these. Alphabetical might make sense, but I think kind of organizing them by how frequently they're accessed. I believe magazine and media library are really common. Cool. All right, I am keeping an eye on the YouTube chat. Feel free to ask any questions, or comments are also welcome, and interested to hear about your development projects. Okay, well, it looks like we have migration. Let's just run that. All right, so we don't have any content imported. I've scaffolded the structure to allow us to import content. So let's go ahead and start that. This is a bit problematic, these menu overlap. I thought they would help clean that up. This menu, the sidebar menu, is supposed to be collapsible soon. I thought that was part of this 2.14 release, but maybe that was just a preview at the latest What's New in Wagtail webinar. Oh, cool. I just never noticed that. That's funny. How did I even get that? Did you like wave at it or something? Oh, it's like an Easter egg. When you tickle its belly. Ah, that's funny. All right, cool. So here we go. This is an example script that I do some pre-processing on the data. It's an IPython notebook. We're working with CSV data raw exports from Drupal, and we need to kind of change the shape of them and add some columns and join, but we've already done that. Let me get the latest data. So here's our, what the, that's not cool. That was strange. So I just got to start somewhere. The magazine's a logical place because it's up top. So it's also the biggest, like most complicated area of our content model. So anyway, let's go ahead and start there. Just for what it's worth, here's the website of the Wagtail project. if you're interested in building any kind of content management platform that would be similar in functionality to WordPress or Drupal or Joomla or something like that, I think Wagtail really is an excellent user experience for the content managers and developer experience, and it's built on Django, which is already really solid foundation, and it just adds a lot of enhancements. It's in pretty wide use. So I need to download some data off stream here, just latest changes. All right, so I've got this data downloaded, and I'm going to go ahead and open it here with LibreOffice. All right, what we're essentially doing is dealing with a content model that it's for a magazine, and it consists of magazine issues, and magazine issues contain articles, and articles are written by authors, and there's some other metadata that categorizes them. A couple of different taxonomies in Drupal parlance. This is a listing of our magazine authors, and we're kind of our Drupal content model was a bit fractured. We have multiple content types and authorship of these different content types, but the authors were in separate kind of collections or separate tables, and so we're unifying them so we have just one common concept of a contact. Now it could be a person with a given and family name. There's an anonymous author, or it can be an organization, and there's also these kind of Quaker meetings, which are a form of organization, and so all of these are unified now into a contacts kind of section or collection, and they're separate tables, but so the data needs to reflect that. So this is a recently exported collection of authors, and we've gone through, and in Drupal the authors we kind of store the full name, so we needed to split that out to given and family name, which is the new structure in Wagtail. And that's essentially all you have for a person. Meetings and organizations just have kind of like a title, but also some additional metadata. So hence the separate content types. So now we've got the data exported, and I'm just kind of scanning through it to see that there's not many like obvious gaps. I think everything's got the columns filled in, and there's a lot of it. So let's try to run this importer. So for magazines, I should also be just giving myself some instructions while we go. So let's create a document here. It's been a while since I've done this. There's actually a show. All right, this is where I'm going to kind of have to refresh my memory. So let's go ahead and run through this. Import data, magazine, authors. $7.25. I believe this is, and I should actually change the date here because we've made changes. Merged and then something like that, merged with names. All right. So, admittedly, it's getting really verbose. All right, let's see if we get any errors. This is a fairly long import process due to the number of authors and the database lookups involved. It has lookup in each one. So it's a little bit slow, but it's still almost 20 rows per second, so it's not too bad, I guess. The slower one is going to be the articles because they have kind of like PDF files or multimedia that's downloaded alongside of them. The idea here is just to get everything imported, test the import scripts, test the data structure, look for any errors in the data, and then figure out a way to move this whole import process online, basically. It's running on my local computer, but I'm going to need to run this in like a container or something in probably a DigitalOcean app platform, meaning the data needs to be accessible to the container. So I'll probably use DigitalOcean Spaces or something like that. Whereas right now I'm just using local file paths. Okay. Nice. Slug. Okay, so that's a problem. So we got to 59%. 1,000. 596. Title cannot be blank. I don't know exactly which model. I'm not catching that error. It's an issue with the data, but it's also an issue with my code. Validation error. Base pi. There we go. 141. Create person. $98. Let me double check my content. Might be that the page wasn't scaffolded. So that's there. And we have a lot of people. So I believe this is just an issue of missing data and not catching the exception. Validation error. So I need to prove that. So we'll do that real quick. Create person. The problem here now is I believe I've got it so it's deduped. I can run this again. Create person. So we have got exception handling there. All right, so this is actually redundant. This title should be automatically generated. There should be a hook here in the model. So just got to remember here. So around 1596. Let's check that data. There's a way to go to a row, I'm sure, but I don't know how to do it. This is probably the error right here. Live Oak Friends meeting. Yeah, that's all. It needs to be indicated as a meeting name, which is, I didn't pin the column, but I think it's this column here. Yeah, London Yearly Meeting, Live Oak Yearly Meeting. So that's the error. So it's getting into the wrong loop because the data is in the wrong shape, and I'm relying on that meeting name column to kind of gate the logic. If there's a value in that column, then it's going to create a meeting, but if there's no value, it's going to kind of default to creating a person. So what I think happens here, I'm not super familiar with the depths of Python, but I think this exception is not caught here because it's deeper in the, it's happening in a different place. So it's breaking the flow of this script. It's not like propagating. I'll just fix the data and move on with this. I think that'll be the best way to go forward. 1596, I'll fix it in the 1598. Spreadsheet online as well we're using. Nextcloud 15. Live Oak, Friends meeting. You know, when we're dealing with this spreadsheet of this size, it's really easy to make mistakes. So let's go ahead and rerun that script now. In this case, it's still going to take a while, but we should at least get past that row. Oh, okay, wow, really fast because it just looked it up. Good, all right, no problem. And let's see if my cleanup worked just before I commit that. Doesn't seem to be problematic. Beforehand, we had a little bit of redundant columns for correcting the data, and then I realized we could correct it in place and just, it would be a little bit less mind-boggling because importing data and dealing with thousands of row spreadsheets is not a trivial task. It's not something we do on a regular basis. Very cool. Now we've got that. So we've got all these authors imported. So let's just go back to the Wagtail. Oops, I'm not running. I almost forget that. So we imported like 2,287 people. Well, roughly 2,250 or so, because there's a few. These pages are scaffolded and facets and things like that. All right, so now our magazine is still going to be empty. There's no magazine content because everybody's imported just into the contacts. We've got contacts, people, meetings, and organizations in the correct buckets. And yeah, it's basically just some of the metadata fields are there. Let me double check, for example. Well, yeah, we have to get these from our CRM, Constituent Relationship Management software called CiviCRM, but that's another importer. So this step works good. Let's move on. Once we've done that, we need to then authors. This is not so strict, the ordering here. It just needs to have several pieces of information before we can import articles. Issues is a good one. And this is a little bit slower. Magazine. Oh, really? Okay, cool. I've actually got a script for this. This is handy. The thing is, this script assumes file names that don't have all this verbose metadata in the name, like the dates and stuff. So I'll roughly follow this. Departments, authors, issues, articles. Let's go ahead and do the departments. Really, the departments needs to just happen before the articles. All of these need to happen before the articles. There's not really a way to show those relationships or dependencies aside from imperative logic, to my knowledge. I guess, yeah, I don't know. This makes it a little more clear, but so for issues, it's just file and then the file name. Which does have the correct file name. May or may not be up to date, but I just need to make sure all of the data are fresh. Otherwise we'll get import errors. Departments, authors, issues, CSV, articles, CSV. All right, so now we should have some magazine issues when I run the server. I believe I'm going to just try to get these magazine import done and call it good for today. And this publication date was July, so we don't have a newer issue, which is the important thing, but around the timeliness. Of the data for integrity purposes. And this is not just for magazine, but mainly, or one example, because the articles may not have an issue if I export the articles and issues at different, more or less different months. All right, so now we're going to run the departments, and just for file path, really, it's just path. It's relative. Well, any kind of file path. Relative or absolute would work. And this is one where I might be able to make it Generic. Did I change those, or did it automatically change those for me? I didn't catch that. So that it can handle HTTP paths as well as file locations. Not sure if I can figure that out or not. This has got the correct name. Magazine. Ooh. Oh, okay. What did we do here? Let's see. Oh, typo in my command. Yeah, I just didn't type the argument name. So that's a pretty quick one. Magazine, departments, and it's not running again. I always forget that. Time after time. Yeah, so these are fairly static. Interesting. Okay. Memorials in the magazine and memorials here is its own content type. All right, now the last one. And this is just magazine articles. I believe it's a relatively recent import. It should be as of July. Shortcut to change that list type. Oh. Line at the end of there and run it. Oof. And this one, I think it needs 2 arguments because it's got to look up. It's got to do this lookup on the author. The article's gonna have multiple authors, and the article authors is just a different set of files. Just I'll make my documentation up to date with that. This is why I've got a hard-coded path here to the article authors. So let's do this. All right, yeah, this is what I was dealing with. I was grappling with this on the multimedia importer. And I believe I just needed to change how I check for those. Oh gosh. Well, maybe I'll just check the code. Authors is not NPNAN. But I'm not sure if it's coercing it or if it's using NAN. Well, let's give it a try. So if row body is not NPNAN. Give it over. Give it over. Row media is not NPNAN. It's a little easier to read as well with this. All right. All right, different error though. That's a good sign. This one's probably relating to the data. Key error or. Base frame. Get existing magazine author by ID. Drupal author ID. This could be that it's treating the first row as data and not as headers. I don't know. That shouldn't really change. Let's see, I'm parsing these rows. Line 70. Maybe let's see if I can open that. All right, just control clear. There we go. Well, I believe this should be print debugging time. But, 0%. And just for clarity, a key error means the key doesn't exist. It's not that the value doesn't exist, right? Which would mean like maybe it's not parsing headers. Yeah, the key is not in the dictionary. So, all right. So the magazine author is being passed in from, oh, not that. Where is this being used? Oh, where it's defined. Oh, it's in shared. All right. So self-referential. Oops. Default to reading the header. Yeah, so the header name should be. All right, so this, I think I'm passing the wrong file. Yeah, that's the whole problem. Okay, so semantic error. Simple mistake, but yeah, just slow debugging. All right, good. Now we should be good to go. Good grief. All right, different error, so that's a good sign. And this is one where the importer, I just moved it out from utils, from shared. Yep, this is gonna take a while. It's got some prints in there. Almost in there. Looks like it's working. Yeah, the articles data shouldn't. We're not doing any manual steps on that, so the structure and columns won't really change, and the values will be just exported directly from Drupal, so it's less prone for human error. I believe this is just going to work. I probably don't need to import the whole thing. I'm not going to check in the journal. So what did we change here? We got the corrected the import. Several things. I wish I could select the specific lines to commit. I think PyCharm allows you to just commit chunks of your changes instead of all at once. All right, well, anyway. More or less, and then there's just an import. Yeah, so we'll just commit this. I'll make it a little easier on myself later on. Yeah, so not much overall difficulty, which is nice. Minor improvements to the data and a few lines of code changes. Still a small pull request. Keeping up with changes to NumPy APIs. Cleaning up code paths, code that's no longer relevant or it's actually just obsoleted in general. When I switched to the consistent column names, I should have just cleaned it up at that point. Anyway. Yeah, these are just earlier changes that I made off or prior to this stream. Yeah, you can see the import speed here is, there we go, a bit slower, and I should remove, make sure I'll remove these print statements. We're at like 1 to 3 rows per second. I'm going to test if I can cancel this and if it'll commence where it leaves off. Meaning that it'll avoid duplicates. Oh man, it's got to import the whole thing again. So that'd be something I can improve here. All right, so let's double check import magazine articles. So yeah, I'm just running a deduping script here. I believe continues the keyword. That's a simple, I think, simple improvement. So if I take a look at the magazine articles data. It should be like node ID, Drupal node ID, or whatever. Well, I don't think I'm actually using it here. It's a big CSV too. Oh wait, here, title authors. Media. Okay, so I'm actually not exporting or importing the node ID. That's a change I need to make right now while it's fresh in my mind. All right, so first I need to change the exporter script. Structure, views. Export data, magazine, articles. So we'll edit this view. Yeah, so we're just not, oh, it does have the node ID. Oh, those issues, my bad. Title. Ah, the node ID is there, okay. Oh, okay. That's just one of the side effects of this scrolling behavior of LibreOffice. It doesn't have smooth scroll enabled, so it just jumps to the beginning of column. All right. So cool. I don't need to change anything there. I just need to change my exporter to avoid duplicate entries. I think this should be relatively straightforward. Well, if I check our data model, for the magazine, article, teaser body. Ah, we don't have a Drupal node ID field. I'll need to add that. This was code, written a year ago or more, so I haven't revisited this. Body migrated. It's all a year old or so. So let's add a new field. And this should be an integer field. A positive integer field, to be honest. And null is blank. It's true. Yeah, so this is a bit tricky. I don't want to drop all the content. Let me see what I've done that before. So since it's this pattern, I don't have it in my muscle memory. So archive filter exists. think here I can just say if article exists, continue. Let me double check this. Stating the logic in the positive, I think is good. Yeah. All right, so I'll run the importer. In order for this to work, I need to then also do this when creating it. So we're going to kind of start from the beginning here, but if we get to 1 or 2% or 5%, see if we can just jump right over there. So the logic seems sound. It's not throwing any syntax errors. The next will be to check for semantics. And I like the way I phrased it here. If article exists, continue. It's a little bit cleaner, and you don't have to have things so deeply nested, such as this one where if not exists. This is not so bad though, but some of the others are more lines of code here. Anyway, it's not worth probably. Well, it's not worth fussing over, I guess. Okay, yeah, so we'll get to like 14% or so. Yeah. Let's see if it jumps then. Keyboard interrupt. — 800 rows per second. Somehow. Yeah, so I think it works. All right, so overall, I think the code is in a good state. While it's importing, I can just run over here to Wagtail magazine. It's not running, but see if I can run Wagtail while the importer is running. Yeah, so we'll have duplication here, but overall I think it's working. Let's go to the magazine. Here's an issue on debt. We got the articles and duplicate imports for field. And you can see the sections here. Yeah, I think, wow, that one imported 6 times. Okay, and I'll have to fix this. Bug, but I'm right now only focusing on the importing part. Huh, that's interesting. But yeah, it's importing the multimedia as well. This is great. It's not perfect. The aesthetic is going to be, we're going to have to change significantly. But for example, this should render in a PDF viewer inline. But let's double check something that's like got more content in there. fix that. Similar error, page URL got express page but got none, so something's going on with the context for a couple of these views. I suppose open a bug report. Oh, why did it? Weird. Copy the markup. All right, and we're just one more test here. So we're at quite a lot imported. Oops, which one? I can stop the import here. And more or less it just jumps all the way to where it left off. Good, really good. I can see we've got a lot more content imported. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this session. Just do a quick summary of the commits. Welcome to the recap of today's CodeBuddies.org live code hangout. Today we're working on hopefully last mile improvements to the Western Friend website prior to beta testing. And there will be, I think, probably a lot more improvements to be made in terms of the aesthetic and maybe finding bugs or adding features and functionality that was overlooked during the development process. But in any case, we're getting prepared for beta testing and early user feedback. So this pull request is kind of a catch-all, mainly looking at content migration still from Drupal to Wagtail CMS, but also cleaning up some stuff, fixing some bugs along the way, and adding a bit of documentation. So today I added some instructions for myself, mainly to remember how to get the Drupal content into Wagtail, starting with the magazine content model. The main changes, we were working with Django management commands, so passing in arguments in CSV, past the CSV files, essentially on my local computer. Added a little bit of deduping logic, where I was actually previously not storing the Drupal node ID. I added this field, you'll see in a moment, and checking whether magazine articles exists. These magazines articles import at a relatively slow rate, around 1 to 2 per second, because some of them need to request some multimedia, like a PDF or an image over the network, and it takes a long time. So I just want to not have to re-import. Also, I don't want to create duplicate content. One of the bugs I discovered today, this code was about a year old, and so the NumPy project has matured, and major version, or I believe at least a minor version, was released since that code was written. And the way we checked for, the way NumPy imported CSV data changed slightly, I think, and maybe I was using a deprecated way of checking for empty values in NumPy column. So just needed to go through and change, and it's actually a little bit more clean. I like the if something is not rather than if not is something. It's kind of just more semantically clean. This change I made today was just to remove some redundant code, where we're just now using the columns directly. Previously, the column structure had changed, but hadn't cleaned up the old code. This is part of the pull request where we didn't write today, but initially creating content menus that display the that render for navigation purposes. Let me actually just run this project. There we go. So we go to the front page, for example. We have this menu up here that allows you to navigate. Most of the changes aren't visible in the front end, aside from the code, the actually content being imported. And as you can see, I've got some duplicates here because of my logic for deduplicating the imports wasn't written at that point in time. Actually, we're reviewing this on GitHub. And this change I made today just to put the to change the menu order on the Wagtail admin. We've got this media library that was at the bottom, and I moved it up a little higher. Here's a migration route today, adding the Drupal node ID, so that way we could keep track of which articles had been imported. And it follows actually with the archive article node ID, because I'm importing a lot of content and wanting to duplicate it. So here's the actual field definition. It's a positive integer field. It's nullable, optional in the form, because we want to be able to add new articles without having a Drupal node ID, as the intention is to move away from Drupal. So we won't be entering the content in Drupal any longer. These changes were made previously, user interface to user interface menu based on feedback during a review session with Mary. So not a lot of code changes today, mainly documentation. And I've run through the importers, the scaffolding of initial content, importing magazine issues and articles and departments, and everything seems to work. I wrote that code over a year ago. It only needed some minor changes, again, because the NumPy project has matured. But there were some errors encountered in the data that I guess is natural when you're having to do some have a human in the loop to make some changes to the data. The raw data is coming through CSV, and then the authors, not the articles, we are manually determining whether an author is a person, a meeting, or an organization, because they have slightly different structures. People have a given name and family name. Meetings just have a title, but as we'll come to later, they have some additional metadata that's not being imported here. And organizations similarly have a title and a little bit of additional metadata. So we combine these under the concept of a contact, but they still need to have slightly different treatment and data structures. All right, well, that's been a summary of today's CodeBuddies.org live code hangout. If you'd like to get involved with this or other projects, stop by CodeBuddies.org. You can join lots of ongoing hangouts, groups to find people who are studying or interested in similar topics, and ongoing discussions. This code is available on GitHub if you'd like to check it out for your own projects. github.com/westernfriend. Thanks a lot for your time. Have a great day, and I hope you're doing well.